What if humanity'd never left the Garden of Eden? What if the very moment we were placed in paradise, surrounded by fruit-laden trees, crystal-clear rivers, and peace beyond imagination, we stayed? No exile, no fall, no curse, just an eternal life in a world that provides everything, where survival is never questioned and conflict never begins. Imagine waking each day in a place without fear, without pain, without scarcity, where the lion rests beside the lamb and the earth gives endlessly. At first glance, it sounds like the ultimate dream. But if paradise became our permanent reality, what would that do to us? Would humanity flourish or slowly forget how to evolve? In this alternate world, humanity's story never took the sharp turn we know today. There was no forbidden fruit, no exile from Eden, no path into deserts, cities, empires, and war. Instead, we remained exactly where we began, in the garden, a living, breathing utopia, endlessly abundant, perfectly balanced, and untouched by suffering. This society never developed weapons, economies, or borders, because it never needed to. Nature takes care of its own here. Food grows wherever you walk. Shelter is effortless, and no disease spreads through the air. Death exists, but gently, as a quiet return to the soil rather than a tragedy. People live long, peaceful lives without fear of what tomorrow might bring. In this Eden, there are no rulers, no rich or poor. There's nothing to fight over, no scarcity to provoke jealousy or fear. Everyone simply exists, freely, harmoniously, endlessly. It's a paradise built not on technological marvels or grand cities, but on an unbroken relationship between humanity and the natural world. Without survival struggles, humans turn inward, toward creativity, spiritual depth, and community. There are no empires, no revolutions, no prisons or poverty, just a world that exists in perfect stillness. But beneath this perfection, a deeper question begins to take shape. If nothing ever challenges us, can we truly grow? In a life free of pain, fear, and urgency, what becomes of human ambition, discovery, and meaning? Is peace enough to give us purpose, or does it quietly take it away? Let us step into this eternal garden and see what it truly means to live in a world that never needed to change. Step into a world where humanity never left Eden, a place so perfectly in sync with itself that survival becomes irrelevant. There are no tools, no fire, no cities. There's no need. Everything is provided effortlessly by the world itself. Fruits fall into your hand without harvest. Shelter is formed by trees that bend protectively overhead, and clean, sweet water flows through every corner of the land. Clothes were mainly for the reason of fashion and warmth. This isn't a primitive life. It's existence in its most elevated form, where the natural world offers without asking, and humanity receives without taking more than it needs. There is no predator, no prey. Lions stretch lazily in the sun beside lambs. The air buzzes gently with birdsong and the rustling of leaves, not with alarm or struggle. No creature suffers, and no ecosystem teeters on collapse. Every part of the garden exists in a carefully tuned rhythm, each life form playing its role in a grand symphony of balance. There's no extinction here, no pollution, no excess. Every fallen leaf feeds the soil. Every death renews life in a quiet, sacred cycle. Disease never takes root. Aging comes softly, with grace, not fear. People live long, slow lives, marked not by urgency but by presence. Time doesn't rush here, it breathes. There are no winters of starvation or seasons of desperation. The concept of scarcity doesn't even exist. There's no hoarding, no harvesting, no anxiety about the next meal or the next shelter. And because of that, something extraordinary happened. Humanity stops bracing against the world and starts flowing with it. Without the stress of survival pressing down on every day, the human spirit shifts. It begins to stretch in directions it never could in the world we know, toward beauty, curiosity, and spiritual depth. Life isn't about what needs to be done, it's about what can be created. The garden becomes not just a place to live, but a canvas for experience. People sing not for performance, but for communion. They dance not for ceremony, but because their bodies are free to move without pain or fear. Every interaction is soft. Every moment is a meditation. But in the perfection of this self-sustaining paradise, a quiet question begins to emerge. If the world asks nothing of you, what do you give it? If all is provided without effort, what drives you to grow, to reach, to change. Can a soul still evolve when the world around it never demands it? In a place where there's nothing to compete for, how does society take shape? Without ambition or status, what defines our roles and ourselves? Without scarcity, the entire architecture of human society transforms. There are no kings, no servants, no rich, no poor. No one rises through the ranks because there are no ranks. In the garden, everyone has access to the same abundance. There's no hierarchy to climb, no empire to serve, no ladder of power or possessions to ascend. Equality isn't an aspiration, it's the default condition of existence. With no hunger to drive division, the need for dominance vanishes. People don't compete for jobs, for land, for love, or for recognition. The very concept of winning loses all meaning when nothing must be fought for. In this world, no one is left behind, because no one needs to run ahead. Instead, life becomes about contribution, not conquest. What can I give to the community? What joy can I offer today? These are the questions that define identity, not what titles one holds or what wealth one accumulates. There are no displays of luxury, no symbols of superiority, no currency to measure success. The absence of material pursuit opens space for a different kind of fulfillment, one built on shared experiences, creative expression, and deep interpersonal connection. A life is not valuable because it's productive, but because it's present. Every person is free to explore the roles that bring them the most joy, whether that's tending to the land, crafting music, storytelling, or simply being a source of comfort to others. In a society without competition, conflict doesn't vanish completely, but its nature shifts. There are no wars, no battles for power or territory. Disagreements exist, but they're met not with violence or coercion, but with calm dialogue. Listening is a primary language in Eden. Disputes are invitations for deeper understanding, not moments of escalation. With no fear of losing something vital, people don't react from desperation. They respond from curiosity. Even learning takes a new form. Knowledge isn't hoarded for gain, it's shared like fruit from a tree. People teach not to elevate themselves, but to elevate each other. There are no grades, no competition for prestige. Education becomes a lifelong practice of mutual enrichment with no pressure to perform, only the joy of understanding and discovery. Everyone has something to teach, and everyone is a student. This is not a static society. It's one of endless exchange, of ideas, of stories, of care. But its energy flows horizontally, not vertically. No one rules. No one is ruled. The success of one isn't measured against another. It's measured by how deeply it contributes to the collective harmony. In this society, individual greatness isn't about rising above, but sinking deeper into connection with others. And in this balance, a new kind of peace takes root, one that doesn't just eliminate conflict, but renders it unnecessary. But still, something tugs at the edge of the mind. When there's nothing to strive against, what pushes humanity forward? If society is free from tension, what drives innovation, curiosity, or growth? With all needs met and no one left behind, humanity turns inward. But can the soul expand in a world with no resistance, with no hunger to silence, no war to prepare for, and no struggle for survival? Humanity begins to redirect its energy, not toward progress in the traditional sense, but toward expression. In Eden, creativity isn't a pastime or luxury, it's a way of life. Every person, freed from obligation, turns toward what makes their soul light up. Art, music, storytelling, sculpture. These aren't hobbies. They're how people communicate, how they relate to the world, how they shape their inner lives in the absence of crisis. There are no deadlines, no critics, no commissions to fulfill. A painting can take a decade. A song can be sung for a lifetime. No one creates to earn. They create because it's how they breathe. Children grow up surrounded by living galleries and open-air theaters. Elders teach, not with lectures, but through fables, movement, and ritual. Every act of creativity becomes a shared celebration of presence, not performance, not achievement, but a kind of sacred participation in the ongoing wonder of life. And in the same breath, the spiritual dimension of life begins to bloom. With no religious institutions needed to mediate survival or morality, spirituality becomes intimate. People find the divine not in doctrine but in the world around them, in the wind through the trees, in the gaze of another, in the stillness between heartbeats. There are no temples because the garden is the temple. Meditation is as natural as walking. Connection to something greater doesn't need to be preached. It's felt in every breath. This isn't a society of boredom. It's a civilization of internal richness. People aren't distracted by crisis. They're immersed in wonder. Science exists, but it's not a race for technological dominance. It's a form of deep curiosity, an exploration of how the universe sings. Technology isn't about conquering nature or building beyond it. It's about understanding nature and living in rhythm with it. Tools aren't mass-produced. They're crafted slowly, beautifully, with intention. Nothing here is designed to be obsolete. Even learning changes shape. There are no schools in the traditional sense. Learning happens continuously, through experience, through dialogue, through shared reflection. A life well lived isn't one that's efficient or productive. It's one that's expressive, one that asks questions not to fix something, but to feel something. Every person, from child to elder, becomes a philosopher in their own right, exploring the meaning of existence, not out of fear, but out of freedom. But over time, a quiet tension builds, not from scarcity, but from perfection. If nothing pushes you, if nothing resists you, what keeps you moving forward? When there's no failure, does achievement lose meaning? When everything is beautiful, does beauty start to blur into the background? Eden becomes a place of immense emotional wealth, but in the absence of challenge, even the deepest wells of the spirit can start to feel still. As days stretch on without pressure, and time flows like a river with no edge, a strange new question surfaces. Without urgency or need, how does time itself change in Eden? In the garden, time no longer feels like a force that drags us forward. It simply exists, stretching out like the horizon, soft and unhurried. Without deadlines, aging loses its grip. Without crisis, schedules lose meaning. There are no clocks, no alarms, no calendars filled with appointments. The seasons change gently, not as warnings of hardship or scarcity, but as quiet shifts in atmosphere, subtle cues in a world that never demands, only offers. The sun rises and sets, but no one races to beat it. There's no rush to grow up, no pressure to accomplish something before a certain age, no dread of growing old. A day can be devoted to one task or none at all. Conversations flow without endpoint. Projects take as long as they take. Without fear of falling behind, people begin to live inside each moment, not beyond it. Time becomes presence, not pressure. This life, unburdened by haste, creates a society where depth replaces speed. People move slower, speak softer, listen longer. There's no multitasking, no distraction. If someone sings a song, others stop to listen. If a child wants to ask a question, no one hurries them along. There is always time in Eden, time to reflect, to dream, to reconnect. Time isn't something to manage here, it's something to savor. And yet, this freedom from urgency brings its own paradox. In a world where nothing is scarce, there's no need to remember. Stories are told, not written down. Achievements are shared, not recorded. Without risk or loss, legacy becomes less important. There's no fear of being forgotten, and so the need to be remembered begins to fade. Time stretches on without milestones, and lives pass peacefully. But without markers to distinguish one era from another, everything begins to blend. People still grow, they still evolve, but with nothing pressing against them, with no ticking clock to race. The pace of change slows to a crawl. Progress becomes less a journey and more a slow drift. Some find peace in this stillness. Others, quietly, begin to wonder if something essential is being lost. When there is no reason to rush, do we forget how to move forward? Time, once a tyrant, is now a gentle companion. But in removing all pressure, has Eden also removed the spark that made time meaningful? When every moment is safe, serene, and sacred, does anything stand out? Or does life risk becoming an endless repetition of perfect days? As the days blur into one another and contentment deepens into stillness, another question begins to rise. In a world this perfect, could peace itself become the problem? At first glance, Eden appears flawless. No hunger, no violence, no sorrow. But over time, something unexpected begins to surface. Not in the environment, which remains pristine, nor in the society, which remains kind, but in the hearts of the people. A quiet stillness, a creeping sense of repetition begins to take hold. In a world where nothing breaks, nothing bleeds, and nothing burns, what is left to push against? What is there to overcome? Without adversity, the human spirit begins to float, not in bliss, but in drift. Every day is beautiful, but every day is also the same. There are no peaks, because there are no valleys. No triumphs, because there are no trials. People still create, still share, still connect, but without resistance. The sense of urgency that once gave meaning to progress begins to fade. There is no risk, no pressure, no tension. And so, slowly, the edge of innovation starts to dull. When there's nothing to fight for, even passion can become pale. A painting finished today looks like the one from last year. A song sung this morning echoes one sung generations ago. In Eden, people are free to pursue anything, but without the risk of failure or the pressure of necessity. Some begin to question whether anything truly matters. It's not boredom, exactly. It's something quieter, a subtle erosion of drive. A life where beauty is abundant, but intensity is absent. This has an effect on identity too. In our world, we are often shaped by what we survive. Hardship forces decisions, struggle forges personality. In Eden, where nothing is demanded of you, who do you become? Without adversity to refine you, without loss to teach you value, without conflict to help define your beliefs, can identity still form with any weight? Or do people become reflections of peace itself? Gentle, kind, but indistinct. The community still flourishes, but beneath the surface, some begin to feel it. A sense of flattening. Without contrast, there is no highlight. Without challenge, there is no victory. Peace has protected everything, but in doing so, has it stripped away the very forces that shaped human resilience, ambition, and meaning. It is the paradox of paradise. To remove all suffering, all struggle, all pain, and then face the unsettling silence that follows. In creating the perfect world, has Eden also removed the story? With every external obstacle removed, only one question remains. If nothing stands in our way, what compels us to move at all? Eventually, the question stops being whispered and begins to echo through the minds of Eden's people. What happens next? When there's no hunger to end, no injustice to fight, and no disease to cure, what does progress even mean? For centuries, humanity was shaped by the pressures of survival. Each innovation a response to hardship, each breakthrough a bridge over adversity. But now, in Eden, there is nothing left to fix. No external problems, no threats, no fire to chase us forward. The traditional engines of change are gone. Without necessity, invention slows. Without danger, courage becomes irrelevant. Without ambition, history stalls. And so the idea of progress itself begins to shift. Maybe, people wonder, progress no longer lives in the external world at all. Maybe it's something internal, quieter, slower, deeper, not measured in inventions or revolutions, but in wisdom, empathy, and understanding. In Eden, people begin to turn inward in ways never seen before. The pursuit of self-awareness becomes the new frontier. Individuals devote lifetimes to reflection, to meditation, to understanding the nature of consciousness itself, not because they are told to, but because there is finally space to ask, who am I without struggle? What is the soul when it is never broken? Spiritual growth becomes the dominant form of evolution. People don't seek more, they seek deeper. Instead of building out, they collapse inward into complexity. Empathy expands. Awareness sharpens. A new kind of civilization forms, not defined by cities or conquests, but by collective presence and emotional depth. But even this has its limits. If everyone is growing spiritually, but there's no chaos to balance it, no suffering to contextualize it, then the journey begins to feel circular. Insight leads to reflection. Reflection leads to stillness. Stillness leads to peace. But what comes after that? When enlightenment becomes normal, where does the path go next? And what of creativity? When no invention is needed, when art is no longer born from pain or resistance, does it eventually soften into repetition? If everything is beautiful, does beauty become invisible? If every expression is valid, does any expression still stand out? Perfection, once a dream, now begins to feel like a ceiling, not because it lacks anything, but because it lacks friction. Without resistance, even light fails to cast shadows, and without contrast, humanity begins to wonder, are we still becoming something new, or just endlessly being what we've already become? In a world without obstacles, where every day is perfect, a quiet paradox rises to the surface. Can paradise itself become the greatest barrier to progress? As the centuries stretch forward, the Garden of Eden remains unchanged, pristine, balanced, eternal. But humanity is not built for stillness. Even in paradise, something stirs, a whisper in the back of the mind, a question that refuses to fade. Is this all there is? Perfection, once celebrated, now reveals its hidden complexity. It offers peace, yes, but it also demands preservation. In a world where everything works flawlessly, change becomes disruption. Progress feels like a threat. Why tamper with harmony? Why question what is never broken? And yet, the human mind is not easily contented with permanence. It was made to explore, to stretch, to reshape its world, not just rest within it. In Eden, people begin to notice this tension, not as rebellion or dissatisfaction, but as curiosity. The urge to grow doesn't disappear. It shifts, becomes subtler. Some start to wonder what lies beyond the garden's edge, not because they need to escape, but because they need to know. Others look inward and ask, if paradise never changes, how do we? For a society that has solved every external problem, the new challenges are internal. What does it mean to evolve when you've already arrived at utopia? Is evolution still necessary? Or is it a relic of a time when life was defined by pain and conflict? Some believe the answer lies in deepening connection to each other, to nature, to the cosmos. Others quietly feel the weight of sameness, of eternal peace that slowly flattens all experience into one long, perfect moment. And then comes the more unsettling realization. Perhaps perfection isn't just the absence of flaw, but the absence of motion. In Eden, every need is met, every fear is quieted. But without friction, there are no sparks. Without difficulty, there are no decisions of consequence. The human spirit, so long shaped by contrast, begins to wonder if comfort is enough. Can paradise truly satisfy a species built for change? Some begin to test the boundaries, not to destroy Eden, but to reawaken something dormant. They paint with chaos. They write stories of struggle they've never lived. They imagine worlds filled with uncertainty, not to escape Eden, but to remember what it means to evolve. The garden watches silently, still whole, still generous, but among its people, the seed of questioning grows. Perhaps perfection was never meant to be a destination. Perhaps it was always meant to be a mirror, one that reveals who we are when we no longer need to fight, but still feel the pull to move forward. The paradox of Eden is simple. To remain in paradise, humanity must evolve, but to evolve, something may need to change. And so we arrive at the final question: is Eden the end of our story, or the beginning of something even more profound? In the stillness of Eden, after countless lifetimes of peace, abundance, and spiritual depth, humanity reaches its most delicate crossroads. The garden has not failed. It has delivered on every promise: no war, no hunger, no fear. Yet as the days stretch on, it becomes clear that perfection is not the absence of suffering, it is the absence of contrast. And without contrast, meaning begins to dissolve. The question is no longer whether Eden is enough, it's whether we are. Can we continue to exist without change and remain fully human? Can creativity survive without tension? Can identity thrive without hardship? And most importantly, can the human spirit continue to grow in a place where nothing ever demands it? Some argue that the truest purpose of Eden is to teach us how to live without pain, to remind us that life can be beautiful, gentle, and whole. That in the absence of threat, we finally have the freedom to become more than what survival once forced us to be. But others sense something missing, not a flaw in Eden, but an echo of the forgotten struggle that once forged discovery, invention, love, and sacrifice. And so, perhaps Eden is not the final chapter, but the first page of something far greater, a training ground for the soul. A realm where we learn what it means to exist in peace, not so we can stay forever, but so we can carry its wisdom into new, unknown frontiers. A place where we confront the hardest question of all. What do we do when we have everything we need, but still feel the need to become something more? Perfection, then, is not a destination. It's a mirror. And when we've seen all that it can show us, we are left with a choice: remain in stillness, or risk stepping beyond it, in search of the next great becoming. So, what would you do? If humanity never left Eden, if paradise was yours forever, would you stay in peace or venture into the unknown? Would you embrace a life without struggle, or crave the meaning that challenge provides? Let us know in the comments. Can perfection satisfy the human spirit forever, or is evolution the only true paradise? If this idea resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this journey with someone else who has ever wondered what lies beyond the gates of Eden.